2024, just the other day, June 9th, 2024, the world changed. The 50-year agreement between the United States and Saudi Arabia and the petrodollar officially came to an end. But why? And what does the end of the petrodollar mean for the rising new political order?
It is
I'm
a big
Dr.
deal.
Steve
It's a
Turley,
big
your Petro
deal.
professor, and we're going to find out precisely what's going on with the petrodollar and how it will affect us going forward. So make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let's dive right in. With the end of the gold standard in the 1970s, the United States struck a deal with Saudi Arabia to standardize oil prices according to the U.S. dollar. In many ways, this deal, more than anything else, elevated the U.S. dollar to the world's reserve currency, since with dollars you could buy oil and gas directly without going through some kind of exchange rate.
Okay.
So that's what a petrodollar in effect is. It's the pricing of oil according to the U.S. dollar rather than gold or some other currency. But since then, the world, of course, has gone through a dramatic restructuring. And nowhere was that restructuring more on display than in August of last year, when 67 nations gathered together in the South African city of Johannesburg
Wow.
for the 15th annual BRICS Summit. It turns out it was a summit like no other. The 5 foundational BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, announced that they were expanding the pact with the integration of 6 new nations into the fold: Saudi Arabia,
Wow.
Egypt,
That's a big
UAE,
deal.
Iran, Ethiopia, and Argentina.
That's a big deal.
Now, as you can see from the map, BRICS literally overnight transformed into the single largest economic and political bloc on the planet.
How close
The global
Africa was.
GDP purchasing power parity, the new BRICS Plus, is now larger than the G7. BRICS
Wow.
controls nearly 40% of the world's GDP, and the bloc now encompasses nearly half of the world's population. And among those were now the OPEC nations of Saudi Arabia, Iran, and the UAE. What this means is that BRICS Plus literally overnight became an oil and gas superpower. According to Infotech, BRICS now controls 39% of global oil exports, 46% of proven reserves, and 48% of all oil produced globally. 1 in every 2 barrels of oil produced on the planet comes from a BRICS member nation.
Wow.
Russia and Saudi
Wow.
Arabia alone account for a quarter of the world's oil production, and Russia and Iran hold the world's first and second largest gas reserves in the world, respectively. Now, this is an economic and commodity dominance that was not even imaginable a few short years ago. So now with BRICS Plus, we've got all the ingredients, as it were, of a new global political and economic order. Half the world's population, 40% of the world's GDP, and an oil and gas exporting superpower. So with that kind of global infrastructure, what's the next obvious logical step?
Yes.
Well, we didn't have to wait long for it. At the heart of that August summit, Russian President Vladimir Putin called on all member nations to agree on a single settlement currency, most likely backed by gold, as the primary means of challenging the US dollar in this new political and economic order. And that's
Backed by gold.
And that was a year ago. That was 2023.
20.
And now, a year later, almost, it's like we're their enemy. So it's like, okay.
Yeah, but they said to abandon U.S. So this had already been planned out. This is already thought of, to abandon U.S.
Abandon and create this
That
system.
was already done, yeah.
Right. And then they were like, yeah, forget y'all. I'm just waiting for y'all to do the smallest thing so we can go ahead and operate in this.
Yeah.
precisely what these nations have been doing. India and the UAE signed a trade agreement in July of last year that settles transactions in rupees rather than dollars, which includes oil and gas. Saudi Arabia and China have also agreed to price some of Saudi Arabia's oil sales in the yuan, the Chinese currency, rather than dollars or euros, and a comparable deal was reached between Brazil and Saudi Arabia some months back as well. And so, as you can see, as it turns out, the petrodollar has really been unraveling for quite some time now. But what does all of this mean for us?
Right.
Yes.
Well, first and foremost, we have to understand that the petrodollar, in many respects, was really at the heart of the U.S. dollar functioning as the world's reserve currency.
Uh-oh.
And we're already beginning to see that status wane. What does that ditching of the dollar in the end mean for us? Well, what we have to understand is that the petrodollar didn't just change the world, it actually changed our nation. For decades, nations buying and selling oil in U.S. dollars turned around and bought up U.S. Treasury bonds. They didn't want to lose their dollars in the exchange process when it got turned back to their own currency. So the buying up of debt allowed our government to print up pretty much as much money as they wanted because they could, in effect, distribute the dollars out to the rest of the world, again, in the form either of U.S. treasuries or in the form of cash for them to continue to buy up oil. Well, what happens when the world doesn't need that cash anymore? What happens when they've largely stopped buying our bonds? Well, without the world using dollars and buying up our debt, that diffusing mechanism largely disappears. And we're seeing what happens in real time with the printing up of more and more money.
Right.
Without being able to spread it out to the rest of the world, inevitably, inflation rates go up.
And then what this makes me think of now, that's why they kept on trying to push their whole, we need electric cars, because they already knew before 2023 that all this was going to go down. And let's hurry and get on electric cars and get away from oil when we have our own resources right here.
We do.
Because the trade was going to be broken with the other countries on how we were doing oil. So
once inflation rates go up, the Fed tries to make it more expensive to borrow money here at home in order to knock the
that's what happens.
inflation
You keep
rate
trying to
back
bless
down,
other countries and
which
without
requires
your
the
own first.
raising of interest rates. Raising those rates has had an enormous stress in our banking industry, which over the last 15 years has invested in a booming bond market, assuming that low interest rates were the new norm. The sudden spike in our interest rates and the collapse of the bond market
I remember that.
is one of the reasons we've witnessed the colossal financial collapses of Silvergate Bank, Silicon Valley Bank, and the New York-based Signature Bank.
I remember.
And it's not just the financial system. Higher interest rates, the banks, means higher interest rates on credit cards, mortgages, car loans.
Everything
And as
up.
you can see, day to day, we're living more and more in the midst of a cost of living crisis, where the prices of gas and groceries continue to surge. Now, there is some good news in all of this.
Tell me.
With much of the world turning away from buying up U.S. bonds, our government is simply not going to be able to continue to print money so recklessly anymore.
Well, great.
And without being able to print money recklessly, it's going to be harder and harder to send money overseas, like with the insane funding we've been seeing with Ukraine. It's equally
true,
going to
isn't
be harder and harder to maintain.
That's somebody knocking. Yeah. Somebody hanging nails or something.
Oh, yeah, probably hang us up on the wall.
The mass spending in general, which might mean that we might end up seeing our government have to begin to live within its means again.
Right.
Right.
Also, the dollar remains very strong, far stronger than any other international currency,
Okay.
and promises to remain the go-to choice among international investors in their portfolios for the foreseeable future.
Hopefully.
And,
Right.
like we saw earlier, this changing world order is causing a boom in the gold market, such that real money based on commodity and real estate is finally returning as a central part of a growing number of patriots' financial.
I see what the
This thing
plan.
off after this video because I'm cold over here.
I see some of the big plan, right? Some of the big plan is to completely, there's going to be a separation from the other countries, which will cause a separation with Israel, and cryptocurrency will super go up. And gold and silver will be back value, but then we have cryptocurrency. The dollar eventually, even though the dollar is strong, the dollar is going to be like our lowest form
yeah,
here.
I think
Watch.
it's going to wind up. So, this
I ain't
is,
saying going away, but it's not. It's
Right.
going to be something people like. It's like when we go to the Bahamas, right? You take your dollar, go to the Bahamas. Do they want a Bahamian exchange, or they want a dollar? They want rather have a dollar because it's a
Right.
higher value, and that's how we're going to be. I believe our U.S. dollar going to be. They're gonna be like, I
But
don't want
even though the dollar, you talk and I remember when there were some things that was going on, the U.S. dollar was way lower compared to the yen. Remember?
that. Well, it always is.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it was like, okay, so what I'm saying is, people, it's time to still really be smart and think about these things. Not only are we talking about, just preparing for if there's an outage or some type of, disaster or whatever it is, or you're not able to get access to things like you were consistently.
Exactly.
So now it's like, okay, we need to really be zooming in to currency.
Yes.
Gold.
Yes.
Coins.
How does that affect stock? Is it traded on
I mean, I don't know what happens
or
when
is
the
this
stock
on the back of it as dollar?
I don't know I need to look into that. I don't know what happens if stuff like is that when a crash comes. That's something that I need to research.
But gold and silver will always be there. To me, diamonds aren't as, they will never be as valued as a gold and silver.
Well, right, I understand that.
So
now.
you got a 100% bust down, which only has a certain percentage unless you don't have a direct relationship with the jeweler that sold it to you and they can buy it back. It's still not like gold and silver. Whereas gold and silver, you can go to any jeweler and like they can get your money.
Yeah, that's an asset.
But I learned with diamonds, literally, if you get all that bust down, you got a particular jeweler that sold you that and he'll buy it back. But if you take that anywhere else, it's almost on that I need it tip, struggle tip.
Yeah, it's just
for
for
diamonds.
the look. Yeah,
for diamonds.
It's for the look.
But
completely for the look.
But this is very interesting, and America should get, because I knew it's going to get to a point where there's some kind of cap because America can't keep going like this. And now I believe what's going to happen now, we're on the verge of everyone seeing, especially we got the right president coming into office, Donald Trump. We got the right president coming into office, so things can be paid attention at and things will go back like this because we're not overspending. We're not giving every country, you're not making other countries rich. You bring the spending back here. Okay, we'll lose the petrodollar, but now we can expand our resources at home, level costs on what they should be. It might take a window of time, but if this is the case, I think I see this as a good result. It's going to be some repercussions of this, but I feel like if we hone in on our spending here in this country, we can go better off.
Yeah, like you said,
we can not go.
Yeah, I'm with it. It's time to really be smart and not just think about today. It's really
time to focus on tomorrow.
Continue to look ahead, and because the things are going to continuously change, I feel, in our world. They're going to continuously change, and we have to be able to change with it.
Do you think once it goes to underspending level or a leveled out level, people still gonna be walking with money phones and stuff because will the cash be that loose where everybody got buku of bread? I don't
Hopefully
think so.
They're smart enough to have a stash and they got an investment banker that they're working with.
I can see the country going back to what we used to grow up in the 90s, how things looked money wise. It wasn't just all over the place in the 90s. You notice that?
Well, they still made it, but they didn't walk around with big phones of it.
Because I don't think it was as in abundance as it became in the 2000s. Money just became like
But if you think about you mean talking about rappers or just period?
So artists is going to be your first. As for me, when I see how artists portray money then and how they portray now, it shows you the big difference in the economy.
Well, yeah, they were still flashy, but big wads of money like that, it wasn't
the norm.
It wasn't the norm. It wasn't the norm. But still,
I'm saying this from a cultural hip hop standpoint.
Hopefully, they're like I said, going to be smart along with everybody, not just them, but people who from in other industries, people who might not be in that bracket. You still want to be smart and do what he's talking about.
This country has lost so much touch. We need to get back in touch. We need the money to level out. We need things to be lowered. We need the foolishness of this world to level out. And this could be a good thing. This could be a good thing. I don't know, because I know somebody gonna jump in the comment section. That's a true economist. Oh no, blah, 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 blah. But based on when I was listening to that video, I see that we could level. I see it could help. I can see the downside, but I can see the up too. So.
Yeah, that was good. And then we also need to stay abreast, on these things, right, people? We need to be aware. We need to be zoomed in.
Stay abreast like a titty.
We need to pay attention.
All right, man. 2024, be more.
Talk less.
We'll see you on the next one.
Yeah.